So, I recently came from Pax Unplugged in 2024 in Philadelphia, and it was an absolute blast. I picked up some awesome tabletop role playing games, got to chat with some wicked vendors, creators, and game devs, and also got a chance to do the thing I love to do the most: play indie tabletop games. So, in this video, I'll be going over my experiences at PAX Unplugged in 2024. I'll be talking about what is PAX Unplugged, the general structure of the convention, my personal experiences, and I'll be closing with who this convention is best for. So, grab your X's and O's, your dice, and your lovely badges because we are talking about PAX Unplugged in 2024. PAX Unplugged was formed in November 17th, 2017 as a need for a growing demand for a venue slash space for board games, tabletop games, and card games. PAX Unplugged has a number of features, so to simplify this, I'll be reading off a little from the website what is available for you. Autographing. This one is pretty obvious. You can get autographs from your favorite in the industry. This year we had GDD, Quincy's Tavern, and Dungeon Dudes, from some of the names, autographing throughout the event. Classic Cardboard. Classic Cardboard is just older classic board games like Categories, Clue, Uno, or Scrabble, to name a few. Community meetups. These are meetings hosted by fandoms or clubs that want to meet quote-unquote officially at the convention. AKA, they're put on the PAX Nav, aka the app for PAX events. Concerts. This one was new to PAX Unplugged. These concerts usually feature people in the gaming industry who are very well known for their music. This year had Jonathan Colton and Paul and Storm who performed. I wanted to go, but I was too busy playing indie tabletop games and I missed the entire thing. Yeah, I was kind of pissed off about it. Anyway, Crokinole Zone. I'll be honest, I can't really explain what this is. It looks like a game that was popular in the PAX community and was brought to PAX Unplugged. I didn't really play this or do anything of that, so I can't really speak on it, but that's okay. If you know more, let me know down below in the comment section. Expo Hall. Exhibitors across the board game and tabletop game spectrum visit to sell, playtest, and show off their products to consumers. In the earlier aisles, we have board games and party games. The later aisles, especially around the 3,500 mark, we start seeing more RPGs. The Expo Hall is really just the best place to soak in tabletop, board game, and card game bliss. There's loads of exhibitors. I'm not going to show you a list, but just know if there's a particular game, company, or product you're interested in the board game or tabletop game scene, you are likely going to see it there. First Look. First Look this year was on the 4th floor. This is where you can see the latest and hottest games that were imported directly from, say, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, and Japan. These games don't have a US distribution service, so this is likely going to be the first time, assumedly, folks from the US or from Canada see these games. Indie Games Night Market. This is new this year. If you were looking for something unique, PAX Unplugged partnered with New Mill Industries to curate a marketplace for newish game designers. I don't know much about this one either, so I can't speak on it, but like I said, all the information will be down below in the description box. LARP. LARP is exactly what it sounds like, LARPing. It was new this year. There was LARP sessions that were being featured, but I never played any of them. So like I said, can't speak on that one either. Learn and Play. This is where you can learn how to play a new board game directly from the developers themselves or from some of the enforcers that were there. Miniatures. It's literally miniature painting. I didn't do any of this, but it existed at the convention, and there are trailers of people painting miniatures. PAX Rising Showcase. This shows a curated collection of indie games from the PAX team and are highlighted on the expo floor and show hall. These games are usually board games, card games, or tile-based games. It is presented and sponsored by Kickstarter, and the booth is usually in the center of the expo hall. PAX Together. This is a diversity and inclusivity initiative ran by PAX. PAX Together chooses specific games and exhibitors for folks to check out, as well as feature specific exhibitors that focus on diversity and equity, as well as who are queer, trans, and marginalized. Special side tangent. If you are a queer gamer in any capacity, check this room out and get a recommendation on what exhibitions, creatives or games you should check and support, especially if you want to support marginalized creatives in the tabletop and board game industry. Panels are obviously panels hosted by Pax. Pin trading. This is a fun little mini game. You can trade specific Pax sponsored pins for other Pax sponsored pins throughout any and all of the Pax conventions. I got some nifty ones, and it's a nice way to show what conventions you've been, or the people you've met, or even just to collect new pins. And hey, who doesn't love some shiny little rocks or shiny little metal on their jacket or, say, on their backpack? Next are tabletop role-playing games. If it's not already obvious, there are plenty of TTRPGs at PAX, from the vendors to games on demand, to specific companies hosting games, to playtesting opportunities. There's just a wide diversity of opportunities to play, run, and host tabletop role-playing games at Pax Unplugged, and there's a whole list of them here. Special guests. These are people that are hired or invited to PAX to speak. I didn't go to these special guests, but here's an example of one on the screen. TCGs and CCGs. I think another highlight is the huge trading card and card game community. There are a number of games like Lorcana, MTG, Pokemon TCG, and just so many more that I don't really know about. I believe there was even tournaments for some of these TCGs, but like I said, I'm not quite sure. Overall, that's some of what was going on at PAX Unplugged on the official side. There's lots of various events for board games, trading card games, and tabletop games. To do this, I'll separate my conversation into this category. I'll separate it into individual days. I did not play any games though on Sunday, but Friday and Saturday, aka days 1 and 2, were jammed packed full of experiences. In these separations, I'll discuss developers I met, as well as the games that were mentioned in passing, and the games I played. On day 1, I got in around 1 or 2 and was just wandering the venue, and I wasn't really sure where to begin. But while I was walking around, I noticed one particular game. It was called Model Our Nations by Eric Silver. This is a GM-less tabletop role-playing game about a secret meeting of the world government. Eric calls the game a Model UN-like, which absolutely floored me when I heard that. That premise alone is just so novel and not something I've ever heard before that it just got me instantly hooked. I have played a few GM-less games, but never anything surrounding the politics, or rather the pretend debate, I guess, of Model UN as a premise to world build. It sounds like a novel concept, like I said, and that alone was its great selling point. I definitely plan to get this game in the near future in 2025 because I wanted to play this really bad. I also think the team behind the game, specifically the folks on the podcasting side, have a wonderful podcasting business. This business is called Multitude. Multitude is a podcast company based in Brooklyn. The company teaches folks how to create and run podcasts, as well as host several podcasts. And I have been trying to listen to more podcast and audio-based media on game design, games as a medium, and just content creation. And who would have guessed they have a podcast on that exact topic called Attach Your Resume. Yet they also have many other topics like science, astronomy, and even about growing up in your late 20s. So there's lots of variety on Multitude, and I would have to give it my personal recommendation. And mind you, I'm not being paid by them or being sponsored. I genuinely think that what they're offering, Multitude Productions specifically, is worth your time. So please go check out at least Attach Your Resume, especially the latest episode. That one was really good. After talking with Eric Silver and Multitude for a bit, I was navigating through the expo hall, sort of getting my bearings, getting an idea of the things I wanted to try, the games I wanted to play, and just the folks I wanted to interact with. That ate through most of my day, just looking through and getting an idea and taking my notes and getting settled into the media room. And then around the evening time, I had the opportunity to talk with the creator of Moonlight on Roosevelt Beach. I really wanted to know what got Richard interested in the origins of the game, as well as his touchstone. And I learned specifically that the touchstones were from Fire Island. He wanted to use the queer history and his experiences on Fire Island as an inspiration for the game. Furthermore, many of the names of the locations in the book are directly referencing the long queer and trans community and culture of Fire Island. Finally, I was deeply curious about two things on Moonlight on Roosevelt Beach. First, with the guest star. He told me that guest stars came from two reasons. One, it was that Richard wanted a way for new players and game masters and others to have a character that was practical and able to be put in the game without any struggle. Nothing sucks more than having a person who you want to join your game, but it's impractical because it would take an hour or more to explain the rules, to create a character, or to just get them situated into the lore and world of the game. Also, the guest stars fit perfectly into the queer tropes of the 70s, 80s, and 60s. From the greaser to the high school drama coach, many of them fit those archetypes and leaned into the mechanics and themes of the game. Ultimately, guest stars had a lot of care put into them, not only by Rook Studios, but by all the others who contributed to the writing. Second, there were thematic choices in the game. The game underlined the messiness of queer and trans community and relationships. For the sloops and the folks of Roosevelt, they're trying to connect in a scary world, much like our own. The game takes inspiration from novels like Carson McCullers' The Heart is a Lonely Hunter, because characters struggle with loneliness and connection throughout. And while I haven't read that book, I can see that messiness is reflected in the characters' backstories and their current found family not being absolutely 100% perfect. Overall, the conversation was wonderful and a perfect way to begin winding down my first day at PAX Unplugged. Day 2 was going to be more strategic. Generally, the second day, or middle of the day for a convention, is going to be its most busiest. Since it was Saturday, there was going to be a huge swath of people, and I knew that going to the expo hall throughout most of the day was going to easily exhaust me. So I spent the day doing what I'm very good at, playing indie tabletop games, as well as looking at old D&D games and talking to developers. With that in mind, I'm going to be talking about the games I, first off, heard in passing. Then I'll be talking about the games that I played. The first game I heard was Fifth Conspiracy by AED Publishing. This is an urban fantasy game where you take on the role of a monster, fae, demon, or otherwise some non-human entity. You could be the personification of Elvis Presley for all I know. In your given house, you are essentially vying for political control over other houses and specifically over the attention of humans while maintaining your humanity. I heard the game was ran at PAX Unplugged, games on demand, but I unfortunately never got the chance to play it. I think the premise alone is super awesome, and reminds me a bit of Cult Divinity Lost, but without the deep cruelty and darkness of Cult. The Fantasy Trip. Fantasy Trip was mentioned in passing while we were discussing the various retro clones in the media room. I learned that Steve Jackson's games first released wasn't GURPS, but was Fantasy Trip, which was written in 1980, and was expanded into the Fantasy Trip in the Labyrinth in 2019. Maze's Fantasy Roleplaying. This was by Ninth Level Publishing. This is a swords and sorority fantasy which uses the unique polymorph system. There is no math, meaning you won't need to add modifiers or proficiency bonuses when rolling. I was told all you need to play is at least a 1d4, a d6, a d8, and a d10, and obviously some more of each sets of dice as necessary. As well, the MC or Maze controller will need a d12. Players can take on 4 roles based purely on the math of rolling that specific dice. That means you only ever roll that given dice for all actions, saves, and effects in the game. Teddy Bear holding a freaking machine gun. This game is by Weird Place. And as you can guess, the title says it all. You and a group of 1 to 5 players play cybernetic teddy bears who are armed to the teeth. Your crew of fuzzy plush-filled rebels fight late-stage capitalism with machine guns and lots of them. I found this game while I was literally walking around the expo hall on Saturday for a quick visit to the tabletop RPG section. And the developer had on a sign that said, "Check out my free indie game," or something along those lines. And I could not help myself. I love that kind of boldness, and the game's style and colors of purple and green make it look really nice to look at. Also, the artists who worked on the teddy bears are just really freaking cool. So for 2025, I'm definitely going to give this game at least a one shot to check out the mechanics and see if it's as fun as the title says it is. Lost Among the Starlit Wreckage by Seamus Connolly. When I think of mech games, I think of two kinds. One that focuses on the drama of war, and ones that are hyped full of passion and awesome sakuga and people fighting for their ideals. I don't really think of tragedy or horror, isolation, and desperation. I guess it's in part because anime like Gundam, Macross, Code Geass, Gurren Lagann, and Grenadier do cover war and death and loss, but never usually as a central topic. It's all part of the overarching story and obviously is part of the plot. These anime and franchises are usually more epic and less psychological. Well, when I was learning about Lost Among the Starlit Wreckage at Pax Unplugged at the indie dev meet and greet, my interest was instantly caught. Let me read the 3 paragraphs since I don't think I can do justice for this game. You are a mecha pilot. You have piloted your humanoid machine across the surface of the Earth, through the void of space and among the shattered hulls of space colonies. You have fought a war that has seen cities consumed by fire, fleets of ships struck down by energy weapons, and mecha emulated by their own stricken reactors. You have survived all the way to today, the last battle of the war, waged in the void. Now, your survival is more uncertain than it ever has been. The visual cacophony of both sides tearing into one another has faded, replaced by the sounds of wrecked machines, an open grave of floating bodies, and the last gutters of fire as atmosphere and fuel are consumed from broken ships. Your mecha is laid low, its diagnostic screen awash in the black and red of dead and dying systems as you drift among the debris. All you have is a dying mecha, an open communication channel, and your thoughts and memories, and the vague hope that someone will find you lost among the starlit wreckage before it's too late. That premise alone had me completely shook. And if there's one game I'm going to be playing in 2025, it is exactly that. Sapphic Space Pirates. This is a diceless game about cozily exploring queer community in space. I actually got to talk to Natalie, who is the owner of Luck of the Harbor. I haven't played it yet, but I actually have it on itch.io from a bundle and really want to give it a try now. Natalie told me that this game came out in part as an inspiration from games like Thirsty Sword Lesbians, and that she wanted to do something that was her own creation. We also talked about her game Warren Guard. This game is about being a dragon rider and the community and dangers that come from being a dragon rider in the world. It reminded me a lot of How to Train Your Dragon, and that is one of my favorite IPs next to, say, Kung Fu Panda and Cartoon Network. And to see a game inspired by that, maybe not intentionally, has me hooked. The biggest hook, aside from the premise, is the wonderful array of art that is featured in it. So if you're looking for a game about being a dragon rider, then definitely check out Warren Guard. Finally is Resistance is Required by Daniel Baker Zakala. This is where you play a resistance fighter taking on the regime master. Admittedly, there isn't a lot of information on this game, but I'm still super hyped because Daniel was giving out his cards at the expo hall, and just seeing the game not only there but on advertisements in Kickstarter has me interested. So I'm excited to see what this has to offer, especially moving forward. Moving on, let's talk about the games I played. I only played one game on Friday and 3 games on Saturday. The first game is Draw Steel. And admittedly, when I played Draw Steel, I had zero clue what I was getting into. When the GM told me it was about being a tactical hero game, I was curious. I haven't played any heavily tactical hero games ever, unless you count 5th edition or Pathfinder 2nd edition once at MomoCon. As we played though, the mechanics became clear to me. We were playing highly powerful characters, even at level 1, who had some really cool ways to power their attacks with edges and abilities that synergized. It felt like this game was polished to play a heroic fantasy where you could kick ass and have your character pushed themselves to their very limit. After the game, I asked, "Hey, what indie game is this?" And I recall the game master saying, and I quote, "Indie? As in a game that made around $4 million on BackerKit? This is the MCDM game." Yeah, after that, I was admittedly silent. As you can probably tell, I'm not too cognizant on, say, traditional D&D games like it, so I entirely forgot that Matt Coble made a game, and it did really well back in the beginning of the year. Anyway, the game clearly is well done, and while I would not see myself running this heroic fantasy game, the vision is clear. It fills the ideals of being in a heroic fantasy game like Colville once. On the opposite end, though, is my new favorite RPG called Liminal Horror. It blends old school inspired rules like 3d6 for stats and rolling underneath your stats with a fun and easy to understand rule set that focuses on survival role-playing game aspects rather than investigation. The game is entirely free to play, by the way, and run on itch.io as shown here. I just think it's really clever how it combines both modern sensibilities of survival horror games with the retro style of OSR games and the choices of using 3d6 for stat creation and d20 for rolling for save results. I think it's a lovely combination. And there is even a better point to all of this. I got to play Richard's newest module for Liminal Horror called A Merry Little Christmas. And honestly, it was tense as hell and so much fun. I'm glad I got to play it, and seriously, Richard, if you're watching this, thank you so much. It was an absolute blast. If you love deep, dreamy Christmas horror stories filled with 1, queer nonsense, 2, strange happenings, and 3, a tense survival situation where you know you cannot trust a potential church, then this is the perfect delight for a holiday season. Moving on to something with more laughing matters, let's talk about Die Laughing. This is a horror comedy game that spoofs the genre. You play the role of actors in a horror movie and tell a terrible movie together. It's heavy on improv with players being able to add to the narrative as they see fit. Admittedly, this game works when everyone wants to lean into the funniness that is a crappy B-movie. Also, many of the archetypes are hilarious. My personal favorites at the table were the monster's helper and the person who realizes they're in a horror movie. And if you couldn't guess, I also bought this game because Die Laughing sounds like a perfect time for anyone interested in horror comedy games. Finally, the last game I played was Zeba's Bed and Breakfast, and I can definitively say I understand why people have applauded this game. And it really sticks out in the ecosystem because it captures the feeling of coziness so well even when I only played one session. I played the rabbits in the garden who wear little outfits. The GM really gave each of us players flexibility to play out the characters we wanted. I made it so each rabbit had a costume that defined them and their personality. For example, there was a firefighter rabbit, an office rabbit, a school rabbit. I even put a Scooby-Doo gang rabbit. And the best part is that this is a story that keeps building with different players. So I got to see how the rabbits were changing over the consecutive games that played. So, would I recommend you go to Pax Unplugged, just pulling from my experiences? Like everything in this world, it depends on who you are. I think the people who enjoy it the most are, firstly, nerds who really are interested in board games, card games, or tabletop games. This convention is made specifically for that specific gaming niche. There are spaces for someone to play both Lorcana, or you can learn about accessibility in gaming, you can check out old tabletop RPGs in the RPG library, or you can play a number of indie and non-indie tabletop RPGs. From 5th edition, to Pathfinder Society, to Games on Demand, to a plethora of horror games, there's no end to what you can do. I even think the Expo Hall has a wondrous amount of exhibitors there for all kinds of gamers. The exhibition hall had a huge section made for free-to-play games and folks looking to play games like MTG. So, if you are at all interested in any kind of card game, role-playing game, or board game, then this convention is perfect for you. Secondly, if you are an indie developer or creative looking to spread the word about your game or playtest your game in general, then this is a good place for it. As I mentioned, for international developers, we have the first look section for board games. For folks in tabletop role-playing games, there are a number of ways to run your game. The ones I know about are games on demand, which is how I was able to play the 4 games I talked about earlier. Also, there are moments at the convention where developers can discuss their newest products or releases. For instance, Games on Demand welcomes indie RPG designers to a meet and greet. There, you can talk about your game and about why you made the game. It's how I found out about Warrenguard and Sapphic Space Pirates. So, game devs, this might be the perfect time and place to advertise your newest game or product. Thirdly, if you are a content creator or someone in media, this is a great place to meet exhibitors and to interact with other people in the industry on a more friendly level, at least I think. As someone who's a content creator and went to the event, I was able to meet other creators, not even other RPG enthusiasts, but just other creators who were in the board game or card game scene. That experience of getting to meet other people outside of my niche made me feel more in community in a way that honestly, internet just could not give to me. However, this convention has its caveats. I think if you are COVID conscious, you are immunocompromised, or you are concerned about, say, COVID-19 procedures and protocols, then this is not the convention for you, unfortunately. And I agree that you should probably be wearing a mask in a convention that has this many people. No, seriously, I would recommend it. I wore a mask and I will continue to wear masks at any convention I go to because, that happened. I also think this convention isn't the best for people who are specifically interested in interacting or meeting game designers, game creators, or exhibitors, or industry experts wanting to network with others in the hobby or in the industry, since this con is made more for consumers and for people to buy products. I would recommend Gamma Expo for game designers and Big Bad Con for a tabletop convention that is very much inclusive in terms of supporting immunocompromised folk and COVID-19 policies and mask wear. With that being said, you can definitely expect to see me at the next PAX Unplugged, which is November 21st and November 23, 2025. And if you want to hear or see any of the creators, companies, or content I talked about, you can find that information down below in the description box. And well, with that, I'm gonna have to head out because I have to work on my next project for the end of the year. And as always, I'm your average everyday queer content creator and TTRPG enjoyer, Blardy Disposition. You all an awesome day. Ciao.